Thank you, Madam Chair. I find it interesting that we're in favor of killing Gaddafi, but we don't want to be there when we kill him. I continue to be troubled as I listen to some of our colleagues, both in this room and outside of the room, and I welcome some of our friends to the newly found and newly discovered by them question of the War Powers Act. It's an interesting piece of work, but I wonder where those questions were. And to be clear, I supported my president when we went to war in Iraq. But where were those questions from some of our friends who newly discovered the Constitution about that war? Where were the statements about the clarity of the mission when we engaged in that? Where were the demands for the end game? We're 8 years into that war, over 8 days, and nobody then and for 8 years demanded to know what the end game was. And it's interesting, 8 days into the action in Libya, they're making the demands about where's the end game. More people died in Iraq in the past couple of weeks than in Libya. And yet the questions are asked under this president's action than they were during any previous president that I can remember. Now, the War Powers Act is vague. It doesn't answer all the questions. War doesn't answer all the questions when you start it, and you don't know the answer to any of the questions until it's over, and sometimes you don't know when it's over. Nobody has tested the War Powers Act. The constitutionality of it is still being argued, but not in the courts, and deliberately so. And sometimes we have to understand that laws are sometimes written with deliberate ambiguity so that we have some flexibility to act in situations that we can't fully understand when things begin. Maybe we need a different definition of war. I don't know. Is it a war when you're fighting on behalf of the people of a country and against its leader? When you're not against the country, when you don't want to defeat a country, when you don't want to defeat its people, but you want to help them liberate themselves from a corrupt and brutal and dictatorial leadership? Is that a war? Was France at war with England when so many there decided that their government's policy and its citizens would be supportive of the American revolutionaries instead of the oppressive king? I think not. But if you think further about it, you know, if a bomb dropped by a foreign government falls on your house, is it a war or just an intervention? And maybe we don't want to define war, and maybe we're not in one. But we have to give these things some thought as we think about the policy. And why Libya? A lot of my friends thoughtfully asked the question, why of all the countries involved in the region, are we going to get involved in every single one of them? Well, you know, if you're approached on the street by somebody asking you for a few cents and has their hand out and tells you their story and they're in need, and you're trying to figure out whether or not to reach in your pocket and help or not because there are so many beggars out there to help. But if suddenly all of the street people say to you, help that one, maybe you have to take a look at that. And this is the first time that I can think of when not just one Arab nation, but the entire Arab League, which seems to be in a little bit of difficulty on every individual basis, says to you, help that one. Maybe there's cause for the exceptionalism that the President has indicated here. So I want to thank him and you and the administration for taking the actions that they're taking. I mean, this dictator in that country who has threatened no pity and only brutality to those who oppose him, we've heard that before, had only Roosevelt, at the outset and during World War II, stepped up to the plate with the moral clarity and intervened when another dictator was annihilating people by the thousands and millions, maybe a million or millions of innocent people would not have been slaughtered.
Thank you, Mr. Ackerman.
Thank you,
Mr.
Madam.
Burton, Chairman of the